Da 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 ba da 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 ba 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 bum bum. Man, I love that song. I don't know if you do or not. You can let me know by commenting, but I do like it. Thank you again, American Wake, for allowing me to use that song for Murph Storytime's theme song. Well, howdy, folks, and welcome to Storytime. I'm Murph. In this edition of Storytime, we're going to be listening to episode 11 of The Lands, which is part 4 of chapter 2, The Morning Report. We're getting close to the end of chapter 2. So before we get started, I know what we like to do kind of is talk a little bit about what's happened so far in the lands. Well, King Michael was informed by Kat that the professor never made it to the cutoff area that they had set up. We now know that General Nails had been waiting for the professor to kind of come by, and he was going to try to talk him into staying there in the kingdom, but that never happened. So King Michael had this great idea, well, maybe the professor's hiding somewhere in the kingdom. So he tells Kat, wake up his son, Prince Sean, said, you guys put together a group and you go hunting for the professor in the kingdom. So that's what Kat does. Wakes up Prince Sean, they put together a group, they start looking around the kingdom. They don't see the professor anywhere. So Kat realizes that they're not going to find him. So he asks Prince Sean to drop him off by the canal so that he can check on some other stuff. And Prince Sean continues looking for someone that he is not going to find. Kat then goes and talks a little bit to King Michael, tells him what's going on, and then runs into Merle. And Merle is not looking too good, but he's standing by the pool of the elephants, and he and Kat have a little exchange, and then Merle starts to walk away, and zap! He uses some magic and brings his staff back, which surprises the heck out of Kat. So Merle is now wandering around the kingdom as well. Rosie is currently tending bar in her empty tavern. She was happy to get a visit from General Nails, but he since has left, and now she is all alone. What is she going to do to stay awake? Captain Hobogon and Queen Kwon continue to wait for the young man who is asleep in a nice comfortable bed in a cute little bedroom. They're waiting for him to wake up. They're hoping that if he gets some rest, then maybe he will remember a few things about himself and what he's been doing and where he's from. But in the meantime, Queen Kwon has been nice enough to go look for something to eat for Captain Hobogon, who seems to be chowing through a lot of junk food. Obviously, Captain Hobogon is a nervous eater. So in this episode, there are some original scenes, some OGs scattered throughout it. So we'll talk a little bit about that after the episode. Remember to stick around after the credits to hear my concluding remarks and little bits of info, and we'll talk a little bit about the next episode, episode 12, which will be the last episode in chapter 2. In the meantime, let's move on with episode 11, a 1 and a 2, and away we go. Welcome to the lands. Episode 11, Chapter 2, The Morning Report, Part 4. Our quote for this episode: you wanted an adventure, right? Well, I believe you picked a heck of a one to start with. Hoffman. Captain Hobogon sat in a chair across from the door that led to the room that the young man was sleeping in. Queen Kwon came through the drapes that separated the storeroom from the merchandise floor of her store, carrying a tray with a couple of hot dogs and a pretzel on it. Ta-da! She said as she walked in. I got us some cute little snacks to eat. Oh, Queen Kwon, you're the best, Captain Hobogon said in delight. I thought you said you didn't sell real food. I don't, but I have keys to locations that do. She put the tray down on the table. He's still asleep? She asked. Certainly seems that way, Captain Hobogon replied. There aren't any windows in that room, are there? "Oh, no, sir," Kwon said. "When I sleep there, I do not want any light to wake me up. I'll probably be spending some time in there myself later. You know what I mean?" "Oh, Kwon," Captain Hobogon said, chuckling. "I wouldn't blame you if you did," Captain Hobogon said as he picked up a hot dog and bit into it. "I really appreciate everything you're doing tonight, Kwon. I'm not sure what I would do without you." "You would starve, that's for sure," she replied, picking up the empty bags and tossing them into the trash. They both laughed. Their laughter slowly trailed off as they both stared at the door. Finally, Kwon spoke up. "So, with all that time spent alone in your thoughts, were you able to figure anything out?" Kwon asked. "Any ideas who he could be?" "Not really," Captain Hobogon answered, taking another bite of his hot dog. Kwon poured some coffee into his cup. "I have to admit, he kind of looks like a young Mahone. You know what I mean?" "Well, one of my men said the same thing. I don't see it." Kwon took a deep breath, like she suddenly was frightened by something. "Maybe it is Mahone. Is it possible that Mahone has been connected to a Janir tree all this time?" Kwon said, starting to scare herself. "That could cause him to forget who he is and everything else." "The Janir tree does not make you get younger," Captain Hobogon said, matter-of-fact-like. "Are you sure? We don't know for sure, you know what I mean?" "Yes, we do, Kwon. If that were the case, everyone would be fighting to get hooked up to one. Janir trees just make you feel like you're in another world. Yes, they can cause some memory loss, but not like this. It just doesn't make any sense. You heard where they found him, didn't you?" "Somewhere in Hubland, right?" "Well, yeah, he was..." Captain Hobogon was cut off when a soldier from the Neutral Lands Army came through the curtain. "Captain, sir," he said with urgency. His entrance startled both Captain Hobogon and Kwon. "Goodness! You trying to give us both a heart attack? Our cute little hearts are old, you know what I mean?" "Sorry, ma'am," the soldier said, "but Captain Hobogon, your presence is requested outside immediately, sir," the soldier said while saluting him. Captain Hobogon slowly stood up. "Now what?" he whispered to Kwon. He only took a few steps when Victor came through the curtains. "Captain Hobogon," Victor said with great urgency, "we have a serious situation." "It appears tonight has been a night for serious situations," Captain Hobogon answered. "What seems to be the problem, Victor?" Victor looked over at Kwon, then to Captain Hobogon. "Oh, for spirit's sake, Victor. She knows more than you do about what's going on in the lands. Now, what's so urgent?" Victor took a deep breath. "Princess Natalie's covered wagon was found smashed up in the Neutral Lands." Captain Hobogon didn't react. It was like he fell into a trance. Kwon approached him, staring him right in the face. "Did you hear what he said?" she asked the captain. "I did," he said with no emotion. He turned and looked at the door, behind which an unknown young man was sleeping. He looked at Kwon. "Sarge," Captain Hobogon said with little emotion. Kwon and Victor looked at each other. Victor took a deep breath, a little frustrated with the captain. "She's off, Captain," Victor said, trying to contain himself. Captain Hobogon looked at Kwon. "I need to go to the Neutral Lands," he said again with little emotion. "I'll leave a soldier here with you. Please make sure our little mystery young man doesn't leave this room." "I will see to it he stays in his cute little room," Kwon replied. "Thank you, Kwon." He shook his head as he walked out of the storeroom. "Never in all my years have I seen the likes of this," Kwon finished for him. It was breakfast time on Aunt Lucy's ranch. The big house came to life as the occupants made their way down to the best part of the house, the dining room. Aunt Lucy was famous for her wonderful meals, so everyone was sure to make it on time, or else they got one of her "show up late again and there'll be no food for you" looks, and to go without one of her meals was quite a severe punishment. Lovely Linda stood in front of the bathroom mirror staring at herself. "What am I doing here?" she said to her reflection. She was one of the people who rented a room from Aunt Lucy, and this was all new to her. She was used to people serving her hand and foot, not having to rush downstairs, hoping not to be late or else go hungry. And having to work, that was definitely new to her. She was used to Daddy paying for everything. Now she found herself dancing on stage just to make enough to live by. But she knew it was all necessary. Her quest was the most important thing to her right now. No matter what she had to do, the former princess would succeed. There was a light knock on her door. "Linda, you're going to be late if you don't hurry up." It was the voice of Linda's one and only friend in the territories, Lady Fuller. Lady Fuller befriended Linda the very day she arrived in the Western Territories. She got her a job, gave her a little money, and got her a room at Aunt Lucy's ranch, which she later found out was very difficult. Aunt Lucy was very strict with who she allowed in her house, so Linda felt lucky to have met Lady Fuller. She readied herself to begin her little show, put on a smile, and opened the door. "I'm ready to go." Lady Fuller gave her a suspicious look. She knew something was up with the young lady, but she didn't question her yet. She knew it would only be a matter of time before Linda told her whatever secrets she was keeping. So, for now, she went along with the girl that she knew as Lovely Linda. They went downstairs and into the dining room. Young Joe and the female ranch hand, Hoffman, were already seated at the table. They exchanged good mornings. Then it was quiet. They all sat there, each in their own worlds, staring down at the empty plates in front of them. The smell of bacon and sausages and fresh-baked cinnamon rolls did nothing to snap them from the retreat into themselves, each one reviewing events that had just happened, or maybe were about to happen. It was an eerie quiet, shattered suddenly by Aunt Lucy's entrance. "I may have overcooked the bacon a little," she yelled as she kicked open the swinging door that led to the kitchen. All four around the table jumped. In fact, young Joe fell right out of his chair. For an instant he thought the horse was crashing through the house to get him. Aunt Lucy stared at them all with one of her "what kind of foolishness is going on here" looks. Then she said, "What kind of foolishness is going on here?" The four looked around the table as young Joe got off the floor. I don't know," he said, starting to laugh. I guess I zoned out for a moment." "I believe that we all zoned out a little bit," Hoffman, the female ranch hand, said, quickly responding. They started laughing, nervously at first, then turned into genuine laughter. They didn't really know why they were laughing, but it continued straight through as Aunt Lucy served them breakfast. Rosie's tavern was empty, and that bothered her. In fact, the last person to visit was General Nels. She knew the morning crew would be there soon, but not soon enough. Rosie did not like standing around. With nothing to do, time just dragged. She shifted some glasses around just so she felt that she was accomplishing something. "I don't know why I'm even open right now. I keep telling everyone I should just close around this time. There ain't nobody here." "I'm here." Rosie spun around and let out a scream as she saw what she thought was a ghost. "Ah!" She screamed as she grabbed the closest thing to her, which was a dish towel. She flung it around like it was a sword. "Go away, ghost!" she yelled as she waved the towel around. "Go haunt someone else!" "Rosie, it's me, Merle," Merle said. Merle was standing there, staff in his right hand, tattered white hair sticking out from his wizard cap. His purple robe was wrinkled like it had been picked up off the floor. "Well, go and scare someone else, Merle Ghost. I'll have none of your shenanigans." "Rosie, I'm not a ghost," Merle stated. "At least, I don't think I am." Rosie gave Merle a look, then dropped her dish towel. "Well, spirit bless me! I can't believe my eyes. Merle, you look like a ghost. As I live and breathe, I thought you locked yourself up in your castle room and died." "I did, and I didn't." Rosie's face lit up as she approached Merle. "Merle," she said softly, "it's so great to see you. However, child, you look terrible." She gave him a hug. "I mean, I've seen dead people who look better than you."
And they probably felt better too, Merle replied.
Rosie let out a laugh. Merle tried to laugh, but it just sounded like a release of air. He couldn't even smile because it seemed like his facial muscles were frozen.
Merle, Rosie continued, what have you been doing? Just rotting away up there in your tower?
It doesn't matter what I've been doing, Rosie. It matters what I'm going to do.
What is that, Merle?
I need to get up to the chalet.
The chalet? Merle, the chalet has been closed for years.
I know. Do you remember the fun times we all used to have up there?
Rosie put her hands on her hips.
Merle, how old do you think I am? You think I've lost my memory? I should kick your butt right back up to your tower. How could I ever forget how we all used to party up there? I might be creeping up in age, but I haven't lost my memory yet.
Do you remember the flying elephants?
Now you're just talking crazy talk, Rosie said with an agitated look on her face.
Elephants can't fly, Merle.
Then she froze as a memory slowly seeped back into her brain. She looked at Merle with a surprised look on her face. Merle was just standing there, nodding to her as he watched her remember. The crystal on top of his staff gave off a faint glow.
Merle, I do remember the flying elephants. How in the lands have I forgotten about them?
She turned towards her bar and rested her arms on it.
I used to ride them as a kid.
Something is happening, Rosie, and I need to get to the chalet.
Child, too bad them flying elephants aren't around, or they'd get you there.
Do you have a horse?
She turned and looked at Merle.
Ha, you're funny. Like I have the money for a horse. Sorry, I can't help you there, Merle. But if you stick around, I'm sure someone will come in who can help.
Merle cocked his head and stared out into the distance. Rosie got goosebumps as she recalled it was the same look General Nels had earlier.
Merle, you okay?
A solution may have presented itself to me. I have to go.
Have you stopped by and seen Beverly yet?
No,
Merle responded as he began slowly walking towards the tavern's door.
But I will soon. I shall be back, Rosie. Until then, keep the spirit alive,
Merle said as he exited the tavern. Rosie smiled and a tear formed in her eye. She hadn't heard that phrase in a long, long time.
And I will trust the process, Merle. I will trust the process.
It had been a lovely breakfast, which was to be expected from Aunt Lucy. Young Joe and the ranch hand Hoffman walked out onto the patio rubbing their bellies. "If nothing else, Aunt Lucy sure can cook," remarked young Joe. "That's one of the reasons I stick around," replied Hoffman. Young Joe smiled and began thinking. Hoffman was a woman in her 30s, dressed in a denim shirt, blue jeans, and boots. She had been Aunt Lucy's ranch hand for as long as young Joe could remember. He never knew why she was there or why she even stuck around. She was strong, no doubt about that, and practically ran the whole ranch on her own. But she was also smart, funny, practical, and, something young Joe began to notice recently, pretty. She never really talked about herself. She was always there for young Joe, to help him with any problem he had. And now, as usual, he had a problem and he really needed her help. He was trying to muster up the courage to start when she did it for him. "So, Aunt Lucy said something about a horse you found by the river?" "Yeah, it's some horse. It's pretty strong and smart and sounds like me. Let's have a look." She started down the steps. Young Joe stood silent for a moment. Had she read his mind? He was just thinking that she was strong and smart. Sometimes Hoffman gave young Joe the creeps. There was just something very mysterious about her. He caught up with her by the barn. The horse was tied up in a pen behind it. Young Joe felt he should tell his story to Hoffman before she actually saw the horse, so he grabbed her by the arm and stopped her. "Hoffman, there's something I need to tell you about that horse." She stared at him. He didn't know how to say it without sounding stupid or crazy, but he knew he had to tell her. I think that horse is like magical or something. Hoffman just stared at him with a non-judgmental look. He talked to me. Hoffman burst out laughing. No, he did. She wouldn't stop laughing. I mean, he didn't talk to me. Like, he talked to me in my head, not aloud. He grabbed her arms as she continued to laugh. Seriously, Hoffman, I could hear him in my head. And that magic torch with the smoke that looked like a woman, there's something going on. Hoffman eased up with the laughing, just shaking her head. She started walking away, letting out a big laugh every now and then. He followed behind her, feeling like an absolute idiot. His only hope would be for the horse to talk to her as well. As she rounded the barn, she froze. Young Joe froze as well, and actually got scared. He didn't like the way Hoffman just stood there. He approached her slowly, eyes wide open. He was afraid of what he might see around the barn as he finally got to her. He let out a sigh of relief when all that was there was a horse still tied to the post inside the horse's pen. "You scared me," he said, hitting Hoffman on the arm. "I thought there was going to be something going on." But Hoffman didn't react at all to what he was saying. She just stood there, staring at the horse. Young Joe started to get scared again. "Hoffman, what's wrong?" She turned and looked at him. "I know that horse. That's Kenneth, Princess Natalie's personal horse." "Who's Princess Natalie?" "Tribal Princess Natalie. She's the daughter of Chief Isaacs." "Who's Chief Isaacs?" "Didn't you learn anything in school? He's the leader of the Western Territories tribe. Princess Natalie is his heir." Hoffman looked back to Kenneth. "She must be in trouble." "That must be who's in the message, the one that came out of the torch." "Young Joe, go and get that torch." Young Joe ran inside the barn and got the torch, which was still lying on the workbench. He ran back out only to find Hoffman untying the horse. "What are you doing?" "He obviously has a job to do, so I'm going to let him do it." "No, you're not," Young Joe answered in a matter-of-fact tone. "We're going to find out how this torch works and get the rest of the message. Joe, put the torch back in the satchel and let Kenneth do his job." "No," Young Joe replied like a stubborn child, clutching the torch like a favorite toy. "Yes," Hoffman yelled, surprising Young Joe. "No," Young Joe yelled back, now sounding angrier. "Yes!" screamed Kenneth inside both their heads. Young Joe jumped at the sound while Hoffman stood motionless with surprise. Kenneth stared at Young Joe, eyes appearing beet red. "Give me that torch! Enough games! I am losing valuable time and my princess is counting on me. So, give me that torch right now." Young Joe stood straight up. Yes, he was scared, but he felt this was now the time for him to make his stand. "Fine. You want your torch? You can have it. But on one condition. I get to go with you." Kenneth whinnied in anger, and Hoffman choked with surprise. "Joe, what are you talking about?" "Come on, Hoffman. You know I hate it here," Young Joe said, starting to get excited. "This is my chance to get out of here, to experience fun and excitement and challenge." "You're taking a torch somewhere with a horse. How exciting can that be?" "Come on, you know there's more going on than that." He had no idea how much she really did know. "A talking horse? A torch where the smoke forms a beautiful woman? That sort of stuff does not happen all the time here on Aunt Lucy's ranch. I have to go." Hoffman took a deep breath. She could hear the passion in his voice, the fire burning in his heart. She knew that sooner or later the time would come when Young Joe would seek the excitement of another life, for it was in his blood. There would be no talking him out of it now. No matter what she did, it would only be a matter of time before Young Joe followed the footsteps of so many other family members and sought after adventure. Her job now was to try to control it. "Okay, fine." "Yes!" Young Joe exclaimed in sheer delight while Kenneth reared in anger. "But under one condition. You do nothing to endanger yourself or your aunt. She's been through enough already." "Okay, I promise." "You deliver the torch and come right back. I'll cover for you here." "Oh, thanks so much, Hoffman." Young Joe gave her a big hug. She could feel the excitement in him. "Excuse me, but I do not believe I said I would be okay for him to come," Kenneth said. I have a job to do, and I expect to get it done alone, if you do not mind. I do not need any help. I just want the torch and to be untied." Young Joe didn't feel like taking any more crap from this stupid horse. "Look, I'm going with you whether you like it or not. If you give me any more lip, or whatever it is you're doing in my head, I'm going to smash this torch to bits." They stood eye to eye, with Hoffman staring down to the ground. She hoped she was making the right decision. She always knew this day would come. It was just she could actually see young Joe change right before her very eyes, and in a way, it made her sad. "Fine," Kenneth replied, not taking his eyes off of Joe. "But make one stupid move, or do anything to hinder my mission, and you are history." "Agreed," young Joe said confidently. "If I do anything to jeopardize the mission, I will leave and never bother you again." The terms had been accepted, the agreement was made, and the adventure was about to begin. Prince Sean headed back to the castle. It was a long, fruitless morning, and he was tired. He was doing what the ranks call the one-eyed ride. The term one-eyed applied to any time you were doing something with one eye open, one eye closed, and mind floating off into the beyond. You could see what you were doing, but it just wasn't registering. Right now, Prince Sean was doing the one-eyed ride, listening to the music that seemed to be constantly playing in the kingdom, and dreaming about maybe one day writing that music. Until his horse came to a sudden stop. He opened his closed eye to see Merle standing next to him. The shock of seeing the old wizard, whom he hadn't seen in such a long time, woke him up instantly. It took him a moment to realize he was very close to the stables and was almost home. For a second, he thought maybe his horse had gone right inside the castle and was in Merle's room. He was happy to see it didn't. "Merle?" he said in complete surprise.
Young Prince Sean, how are you?
"I'm fine, Merle. Are you okay?"
Something is happening, young Prince Sean, and I need your help.
Prince Sean didn't like how that sounded. In fact, it scared him. Although he didn't want to show it, he was frightened by Merle's appearance, his bloodshot eyes, his tattered hair, his many wrinkles. But his mind told him he was a prince, and he had to treat Merle with all the respect he deserved. He was, after all, his grandfather's most trusted aide. What do you need?"
Your horse.
Merle answered right away, almost like he knew exactly what Prince Sean was going to say.
I need to get to the old chalet at the top of the hill.
Merle pointed up to the old building that resided on the top of the grassy hill. It wasn't a huge hill, but it was definitely too big for Merle to climb. Prince Sean followed Merle's finger and looked at the old building. "Merle, why do you need to go up there?" Merle just stared at the building, lost in his memories.
You know, young Prince Sean, there used to be gondolas that went from that chalet.
He began to turn slowly, pointing at some invisible line in the sky.
All the way over to the land of technology.
Prince Sean followed his finger, looking at the sky but seeing nothing but the waking sky. "You mean Techland?" Merle continued.
That was back when the two lands were joined in friendship.
He lowered his finger, but was still staring in the direction of Techland, watching as the sun began lighting up the big white mountain.
In fact, the gondolas used to go right through the big white mountain.
"No way," the prince said in disbelief. Merle turned and looked at the young man.
Oh, yes, young Prince Sean. They went right through the big white mountain. And the people of the kingdom and the land of technology used to be together, more like family than friends.
He turned and looked at the prince.
Things have changed, and it has saddened me. But,
he said with all the excitement he could muster, which wasn't much,
something is happening, and I need to get to the chalet. So, young Prince Sean, may I borrow your horse?
The prince looked around, not so much because he was afraid, but because he was looking for someone to help him with the decision. Should he give up his horse, something they are taught never to do,
Or should he turn down a man who was a link to a time long gone? A man that the prince would love to just sit with and listen to. He noticed that Merle was petting his horse's head and the horse was enjoying it. It was like she was telling him that it was okay. He swung his leg around and dropped down to the ground. Okay, Merle, you can use her, but I don't know how you plan on getting on her.
It's simple, young Prince Sean. You are going to help me.
What? Merle pointed to a bench that was along the walkway.
Let's move over to that bench.
Merle grabbed the reins of the horse and led her over to the bench. He positioned himself between the horse and the bench. As the prince arrived, Merle looked at him and gave him a very, very little smile. It was hardly noticeable, but it was there, and Prince Sean saw it. Merle held his staff up, and in a flash it disappeared. Prince Sean stepped back in surprise.
It surprises me too, young Prince Sean,
Merle said as his smile got a bit bigger.
Help me on the bench, would you please?
It was very awkward. Prince Sean was trying to balance Merle as Merle lifted his leg up onto the bench. He wasn't steady at all and had a hard time getting his foot secure. Prince Sean grabbed his leg while trying to steady him and placed it on the bench. Then the prince had to basically lift and hoist Merle up, hoping he wouldn't fall over. Merle let out a little laugh as they balanced him on the bench.
This reminds me, young Prince Sean, of when I taught your father how to mount a horse,
Merle said with a little wimpy laugh. He looked down at the prince.
We are doing much better than he did.
His smile got bigger, and the prince returned it with a smile of his own.
Now, onto the horse.
How are we going to do that? But before he could get the last word out, Merle had swung his leg around to try to get it on the horse. He kicked the prince in the head and ended up getting his robe tangled around the prince's head. That caused his leg to come down on the horse's back, which made the horse move in a little closer, almost as though it was trying to help him. Prince Sean fought to get the robe off his head when Merle grabbed the back of the horse to get on it. This caused the prince's head to bang up against the side of the horse, which he couldn't see because the robe was still wrapped around his head. Merle placed his foot on the prince's shoulder and tried to lift himself up on the horse, but that just caused Prince Sean to collapse to the ground. Merle let out a groan as he fought to climb on the horse, hitting Prince Sean in the head, shoulder, and neck. The prince started yelling for him to stop and finally got himself untangled from the rope. He was now on the ground, right under his horse. He crawled out from under her and stood up to see Merle sitting in the saddle, proud as can be, but looking in the wrong direction.
I don't believe this is going to work,
Merle said with a little smile. Prince Sean shook his head. Well, if he hadn't started without my help. He lifted Merle's right leg and began to swing it around. Lift your left leg and just spin in the saddle. Merle did and ended up kicking the poor horse in the head. She let out a whinny. Scoot back in the saddle, the prince said, which Merle did, and the next thing he knew, he was sitting in the saddle, facing the right direction. Merle, please bring her back and return her to the stables. If you can, make sure no one sees you. Merle looked down at the young man and smiled. This time the smile looked like a smile, even though his eyes didn't really follow along. They still looked tired and worn, but he was smiling.
Thank you, young Prince Sean. I will return her in good shape. No fear. Something is happening, and much like this day, it is waking up.
What is? The prince asked. Merle gave him a wink, then slowly started off towards the grassy hill and the chalet. Hoffman walked with young Joe and Kenneth to the edge of Aunt Lucy's ranch. They hadn't said much since they left the barn. Hoffman was deep in thought. Was she doing the right thing? Could this be jeopardizing young Joe or, worse yet, the life of Princess Natalie? Young Joe, Hoffman broke the silence. You mentioned something about the torch having a message. What exactly did it say? Well, I guess it was the princess and she was asking for help from someone called, He paused as he tried to recall the name. Something like Kobe-ron or something or other? Hoffman stopped in their tracks. Kobe-ron Biashi? Yeah, that's it.
Hobogon. You're sure? I think so, yeah. Hobogon. Well, that's a name I haven't heard, and she trailed off. Well, do you know him? I know of him. She looked at Kenneth and asked, do you even know where he is? Kenneth shook his head no. Then where were you planning on going? She looked at them both, and neither one of them had an answer. Young Joe looked at Kenneth. I thought you knew. Kenneth shook his head again. Young Joe let out a sigh of discouragement. Hoffman, do you know where he is? I don't, but I believe I know someone who might. You're going to have to go into town and find Captain Willie. He's the captain of the steamboat. Start at the Horseshoe. He might be there. And he might know where Hobogon is. Hoffman turned and grabbed Kenneth by the reins, staring into his eyes. Kenneth, I'm not sure what Princess Natalie is doing, but if she is sending you to find Hobogon, then it must be important. You will have to work with young Joe here in order to succeed. You understand me? Kenneth only stared at her. There was something about her tone that told him that this was even more serious than he'd originally thought. Then let's get going, Kenneth yelled in her head. Young Joe, you be safe. She gave him a hug, much to his surprise. You wanted an adventure, right? Well, I believed you picked a heck of a one to start with. Young Joe wasn't quite sure what that meant. Suddenly everything became very real. Hoffman was never this serious. He got the feeling she knew more than she was sharing. He looked at Kenneth. All right, boy, this is it. Let's deliver this message. He leapt onto the saddle. It's about time, Kenneth yelled. And who are you calling boy? He took off like a bat out of hell. Hoffman watched him ride off into the wilderness. She had a sinking feeling in her stomach. She was going to have to make some quick decisions here. Was she just going to let young Joe go on his own? Or was she going to have to protect him like she always has? He was out of her sight now, so she was going to have to decide fast. Captain Hobogon sat upon his horse, scratching the top of his head with his index finger. In front of him was the smashed-up covered wagon that belonged to Princess Natalie. The dawning sun showed few clues of what happened, and Captain Hobogon was at a loss as to what to do. The wagon was completely destroyed. There were signs of a burning fire, and there were tire tracks that led in all directions. Victor rode up beside the good captain. There are no signs of anyone, Captain, he said, shaking his head. What do you think they were burning? Well, we can't make assumptions, Victor, Captain Hobogon responded. But my training as a detective would lead me to believe that the occupants of this wagon have been taken. Do you believe it was Princess Natalie? Victor asked. Captain Hobogon didn't answer. He knew it was Princess Natalie, and he had a pretty good notion that she had been taken by the fine inhabitants of Techland. But there was this nagging feeling in his stomach. Victor, do you believe that we were distracted by the young man we found in Hubland? Victor didn't answer. Captain Hobogon continued. Do you think that Techland could have planted that young man there so we wouldn't be out here to help Princess Natalie? Victor shook his head. Now his stomach was nagging him. Had they been hoodwinked? Oh, Captain, I hope not. Captain Hobogon scratched the top of his head with his index finger. He moved his horse very close to Victor. As soon as Sarge gets in today, you need to have her come see me. I'm going back to Merchant Valley and wait for the young man to wake up. Sarge needs to be brought up to speed and lead the investigation of this. We may have fallen into a trap, and it may have cost us big. Victor stared at the destroyed covered wagons. Captain, what if Techland does have the princess? Well, there's nothing we can do, Captain Hobogon answered sternly. That is not our job. Well, that doesn't seem right, Victor replied quickly. We are not the Gang of Five, Victor. We are soldiers of the Neutral Lands Army. We have our orders and duties, and rescuing princesses from Techland is not part of that, Captain Hobogon quietly yelled, so none of the other soldiers heard him. That doesn't seem right, Victor said, even though he knew Captain Hobogon was right. Well, take it up at the next meeting of the lands, then, Captain Hobogon replied. He gave the crime scene one last look around. Never in all my years have I seen the likes of this. The captain turned his horse and rode off quickly in the direction of Merchant Valley. Thank you for visiting the land. We hope you come visit us again soon. Uh-oh. Has Captain Hobogon been hoodwinked? Was the young man a planted diversion? Oh, Captain Hobogon seems a bit rattled there now. Even with his extensive training, looks like he may have dropped the ball. Now what's he gonna do? Not sure if you know this or not, but never in all his years has he seen the likes of this. Starting to make that young man a little more mysterious and suspicious, huh? And Merle makes an appearance. Merle's back. What's that crazy old man up to, huh? So I mentioned at the beginning that there were some OG scenes in this episode, and in fact, all three of the young Joe scenes are OG scenes. I know this would make my little bro Tim upset that I'm talking about this, but and we will talk a lot more about that at some point later on. But just so you know, the breakfast scene was one of the earlier scenes that I wrote. Just because I like that idea of them all having breakfast together and all kind of freaking out. They're all in their heads, and when Aunt Lucy comes busting through the door, they all lose it. So that was a very early on. And then the following two scenes with young Joe talking to Hoffman, they came a little bit later. Not much later, but they came a little bit later as the story began to take shape. So the young Joe storyline was one of the earlier developed storylines, I guess, in the lands. So there's just one episode left in chapter 2, and that'll be out soon. So believe it or not, in the last episode, in episode 12, you're still going to meet some citizens for the first time in the lands, and you're going to see an old friend of ours. He'll make another appearance. Then we will be done with the morning report. So that'll be after episode 12, our next episode. In the meantime, got a message here from Merle. Merle has something to say. Merle says,
"Hello, my older friends. I am very happy that you have visited us in the lands. Please make sure that you hit like and that you subscribe, especially if you want to visit us again. Be sure that your notifications are turned on, whatever that means. And we would love it if you would leave comments. You know something is happening in the lands you do not want to miss out. Come back and visit us again. I certainly hope to see you again, my old friends."
Oh, Merle. Thank you very much. I too hope that you come back. I hope you are enjoying yourself. Almost done with chapter 2. Come back and hear the end of it. We shall be hearing from you, hopefully, at some point. Make a comment. Be sure to hit like. Visit us on Facebook at Murph Storytime. And until then, do everything you can to keep the spirit alive. Take care, y'all.